Well, hello traders, this is Ron Wagner and welcome to this edition of Stock Talk. Today I want to talk about candle open and closes, and I'll tell you, learning to read candles is like watching stories unfold and being able to see each next candle be able to speak to us and help us determine the best action to take. I've been studying candles now for about 15 years, and I remember when I first started looking at them, they actually just started to become more popular. A lot of the charting programs that had them, really the candles were hard to read, and they didn't really come together very nicely. Over the years now, almost every good charting, reliable charting program has great-looking candle charts, and therefore it makes it much easier for us to be able to take a look at the price and volume action by looking at the candles. What I want to talk about more specifically now, and of course we go into much more depth in some of our coursework. We have total chapters dedicated to specifically how to read these candles, because once you learn how to read them, like learning a foreign language or learning anything worthwhile that you commit to memory, will become easier and easier for you to become better at your trading. Well, in this case I want to talk about the opens and closes. So what we have is three candles. I've marked them exactly the same, 1, 2, and 3. I've marked where an entry would have been. Now, naturally you would hope and want your next candle to, of course, overcome the previous entry above where you had already gotten in. Well, the first candle closed obviously very strongly in all three examples, but your next candle now obviously opens up lower than the previous close, and you obviously have to be a little concerned. You're not stopped out. Perhaps you put your stop under the low of that previous candle, or perhaps even lower under a previous pivot, depending upon your trading style. But naturally you have to be concerned now because this is not what you expected. This candle opened deeply into the candle that you had already that you were in and that you were profitable in, and then all of a sudden you actually moved up where the topping tail is at B. And then, as you can see, we closed at C. So, you have to be, at this case, a little concerned. In fact, maybe a little bit more than a little concerned, because unless that next candle does overcome the topping tail and start to move higher, this is, at this point, something that could be a little bit more damaged. It's not the expectation of being able to overcome the previous area where you were in, which would be the new area of resistance. Now, in the second example, you can see that the candle did not open at D as deeply as it did in the example on number 1. Okay, nevertheless, we still have a rather large topping tail at E, and although it closed at F, you have very much the same scenario. In other words, maybe you're not as concerned, you're a little bit further away from where you might get stopped out, but nevertheless, that's not the picture that you're looking for in order to be able to see your stock move up more aggressively into the profitable zone. Now in example 3, we can see we opened up about the same place as we did on example number 2, but yet it closed at the very top of its trading range, at the highs of where you were the previous candle. Of course, that's a lot more bullish. You would have been scared for a little bit, and on the other hand, it's not nearly as bearish looking as examples number 1 and 2. 1 you have a lot more concern with, because the bears did take more control and brought it down lower, even though you have a topping tail about the same as you do in example number 2. And you closed, of course, more weakly, still inside the candle in example number 1. Whereas in candle number 2, at least you closed near the highs of the previous candle, even if there is some supply or selling at the top of E, the letter E, on that example number 2. Whereas number 3, again, it would have been a little bit scary for a short period of time, but then you did close back on the highs, and that would be much more indicative of a further move higher. And so it's very important to be able to read these relationships. I wish I could go a lot longer, but in the context of this type of very short lesson, I'm limited in the scope of what I can actually talk about, and because of the time allowance. But there's so much more that I'd like to spend hours going over with you to be able to encourage you to read candles really well, so that as they develop, whether you're looking at daily candles or 60-minute candles, or whether you're looking at 15 or 5-minute candles, boy, you can do an awful lot to improve the accuracy of your trading by just seeing how these candles unfold in relationship, of course, to the market environment, and in relationship, of course, to the previous candles that may have formed patterns that you're trading with. Well, I hope this very short explanation of candles and opens and closes might have helped you a little bit. And And I look forward very much to being with you in the next edition of the Stock Talk. Have a great trading week, everybody.